right, welcome back, everybody. My name is Jack Paisley, and this is Sports Casual, and we are talking college football today. Today, we had the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State, and honestly, this felt like one of the bigger national championships that I've witnessed in the last couple of years. Obviously, this is first year with the new expanded playoff that they're doing, but this was against the 7 seed, which is Notre Dame, which is shocking they made here, and then the number 8 seed, which is also shocking just looking at the seeds. Um, and Notre Dame lost the game. It was a real bummer. I felt like a lot of the country was kind of wanting to see that old school college brand come back, but the game ended up being 34-23 for the Ohio State Buckeyes. And honestly, it didn't feel as close as that score showed, as even though Notre Dame had a chance to tie it at one point or got within one score coming down the end. It didn't feel that close of a game. It just felt like Ohio State was clearly the better team. Obviously, they're the team that has all the NIL money this year. I think they were the top spender this year, or at least in the top three if they weren't number one. And you could kind of see that offensively, their players were just better than the defensive players for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said it was a huge college football guy growing up. I was born in Colorado, and it's just not that big out there. But living down in Texas this year, especially with Texas being good, I came to appreciate what it's like being in football states where college football is actually relevant outside of just the pros. Even though the Cowboys weren't really relevant this year, it felt like everybody was talking about Texas all year long. So I kind of actually get grew to appreciate college football and got to watch this year. I was actually watching games and kind of following, and it was honestly my favorite that I've kept up with. I normally keep up with like the storylines, but don't really watch the games this year. I actually watched some games, and I really enjoyed the parody of this season. That I think with the NIL, at least for now, until they kind of come out with rules and everything, it was fun seeing like those teams pop up out of nowhere, with whether that was Boise State or SMU or Colorado's been relevant since Dion has been there. That I've actually enjoyed college football this year, and watching this game, I'd be lying to you if I didn't want to see Notre Dame win just for the Rudy fact, like that old school Rudy, Sean, whatever his name is from Lord of the Rings. Like that's who I was cheering for in this game. Um, I'm a big fan of parody, unless it's my teams in major leagues, and I thought it would just be a cool story if Notre Dame came back and won that national title. I think this is the first time they've been back in the game since the Manti Te'o team with the whole year of that big scandal. But yeah, it just didn't feel that close. They kind of fell behind. Notre Dame is this year constructed to be kind of like a hard nosed defensive team with a run first attitude, and they got forced into passing the ball, which to be fair, they made it a game. I came real close to turning this off uh about almost like just after halftime. Like it felt like they were playing tight and nervous and just kind of got outplayed in that first half. If they played that first half a little tighter, I think that you could be talking a different story, because the Notre Dame coach is clearly a really good football coach. But it also kind of showed me that in at least in the college space, it's tough to beat that money. You're buying those top end players, and if you can have a full team of them, it's gonna beat the teams most of the time. So um, yeah, I mean, I'm sure Shane Gillis and all those Notre Dame fans that have really just been talking loud are devastated out there, and I could see why, because this would have been kind of that fairy tale run for the team that no one was really talking about coming in this year. But yeah, it was a fun game to watch overall. So congrats to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ryan Day probably saved his job by winning that national championship after losing to Michigan earlier this year. They were just getting crucified for losing that game, and uh, yeah, no one's gonna be talking about Michigan until next year when they play him, because they won that national title. If they had lost that game, it might have gotten a little loud out there. I think wrongfully so, but woulda, shoulda, coulda. And we're never gonna have to talk about that ever again. And then the other big news that came out today is the Bears are finalizing a deal for Ben Johnson, who is the not Ohio State, the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator. He was kind of like the hot hire that everybody wanted. Everyone's trying to get that next Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, and after what Detroit's been able to do the last couple years, this is supposed to be the guy. Uh, and yeah, so the Bears actually went ahead and are finalizing that deal, which it had kind of been talked about since the Jared Goff fumble rooski that they did. Everybody said they were just showing off for the Bears brass that day, and if that was the case, worked out. But it did get me thinking um, on some of the other job openings on who's kind of the available candidates for those big problem areas for the Raiders. I don't know what coach would want to take that. Like you have no, it's not a great roster. You have no quarterback, and obviously you're playing in a pretty good division. So I have no clue who they're gonna end up going with for that one. Like that's just the honest answer. I think they maybe could try going some upstart college coach or yeah, that's really the best guess I've got. Unless maybe Aaron Glenn maybe would try, but it's really just not a great job. And whoever is going to get it, there's a decent chance they're going to be in and out, just like every other Raiders coach, especially until you get that quarterback. And they have nowhere close. They don't even have the draft cap to go get any of these two guys from this year. So that's going to be a tough one. But the one that I actually think would work would be Pete Carroll with the Jets. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. Apparently, Pete Carroll wants to get back in. And the biggest thing with the Jets is just they have a terrible culture apparently. Like for as long as it's basically since Mark Sanchez and the butt fumble several like long time ago, the Jets have been irrelevant even though they've had talented rosters. That I really like Pete Carroll coming in just to stabilize that organization and build that kind of, culture up within the organization. If you're ending up working with Aaron Rodgers if he doesn't retire, I think Pete and Aaron I think would be where I think they'd work well together. And Pete's so full of energy that I think that would be a hire that I really like. But jumping back to the Bears, I think the reason they actually went with Ben Johnson over someone like a Mike McCarthy is one, it's kind of like the sexy hire. So it's gonna like no one's gonna be bitching that you know you hired this coach that can't win in the playoffs or he's not I mean, you're not gonna have people complaining about this hire. You're gonna have people being like, "Oh, you're looking out for Caleb Williams because he is the only like other than Josh Allen, he's one of the few quarterbacks that has had a defensive coach as a rookie and showed flashes, but kind of sucked overall, if I'm honest. Which it wasn't all on him, to be fair, but they're bringing in Ben Johnson to work with Caleb Williams to try to fix this organization that has been outdated for my whole lifetime. Closest they ever were when I was alive was Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall, which was probably early to late 2000s. That they've been an irrelevant franchise, and now with outside of just the Packers, with the Lions and the Vikings showing that they're really good teams, like they don't want to be the odd man left out as like the joke of their division. Um, whether it works or not, I'm not 1,000% sure. I would lean towards the first year it working, but the second it gets loud, I think it's gonna fall apart. If I'm honest, I don't know Ben Johnson as a person. I don't know him as a leader. I only know him as an offensive coordinator, and he's clearly really good at his job. But as a head coach, you have to you have to take the licks on your face, and you see guys like Mike McCarthy that's actually really good at it, and then you see somebody like maybe a Mike McDaniel down uh, in Miami that's a little less comfortable taking that on the chin after these bad decisions or certain plays not working or whatever the case may be. Maybe players getting into trouble. That I think if it gets loud and they start losing, I think this could fall apart really quick. Because this was a guy that didn't want to really take a head coaching job in the last cycle. Everybody wanted to at least interview him, and he turned them all down basically to go back to Detroit and try to win a Super Bowl. Um, The I think Caleb Williams should be excited, but I think the city of Chicago should be nervous because I'm not sure that this is going to be the savior to your franchise that you need. I think that you need to go and pay the big bucks for somebody like either trading for Mike Tomlin, or you probably weren't ever going to get Vrabel, but that kind of leader that knows what they've done. They've built cultures before. That's what you've seen work the last couple of years, whether that's Dan Quinn, who was already head coach, Sean Payton with the Broncos, Jim Harbaugh. Like, all these guys are established guys coming into organizations that have talented players but need to be stabilized. And Chicago is a really good roster, but they have been in such chaos because of that ownership group for the last decade that I think you need to bring in a little more experienced head coach, especially since it's the same GM that they have. That I think that it's going to be a fun experiment to watch. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, now's your time to be optimistic because I think this could go way of Robert Sala, where it's going to fall apart and get really loud real quick. But exciting time. We're starting to see the big name hires, and all the positions are going to start filling up once this playoff run is over, and all those teams, start actually finishing the interviews and offering jobs. That the one I hope gets offered is Steve Spagnuolo with Kansas City. I hope he leaves Kansas City. I don't know why you wouldn't look at him. He's one of the top defensive coordinators for the last several years and one of the most stable organizations. So maybe that's the Ravens coach. I I'm sure he would big pay raise, but that's one move that I would like to see this year is Kevin Spagnuolo or Spags leave Kansas City. All for selfish reasons, but that's what I'm hoping to see. And plus, he deserves a pay raise. Give him a head honcho job somewhere and give him a pay raise. But yeah, congratulations to the Ohio State on another national championship in football. Thanks for watching.